It's the SDG podcast. We're here with our podcasters. Say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Els Tahura.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Josie Adkins.
And I'm Kyle Bacher. And today we're going to talk about training versus learning.
Versus?
Grudge match.
Are they fighting it out?
It's a fight to the death.
Okay.
It's like King Kong versus whatever the other guy was. Godzilla.
Godzilla?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how complicated to make.
There's so many other people. It's hard to pick.
Fighting on an aircraft carrier, of all places. So what is the difference between learning and training? Is there a difference, Peter?
Yes, there is a difference. Learning is the acquisition of skills through doing and stuff like that. Training is kind of hoping to be learning, but isn't necessarily learning. You do the things that you're trying to do and trying to learn, but you may or may not learn them in the training environment. So how's that for a short answer?
Yeah, learning is something that you do for yourself.
I had no shoe tying training. I only had to learn how to tie my shoes.
Yeah. Training is something horrible they do to you in a 5-day boot camp.
I was going to say, like, training seems to more often be mandatory versus learning. Or at least if you sign up for training, you know what you're getting into.
And
what do you think, Josie?
Yeah.
Well, so from what it seems like you're saying, is training is like a noun, and then the verb of doing would be the learning. I've always seen training, though, as kind of like and kind of in a way a one-way street. This is the information that we know, so we're telling it to you. Whereas learning is, here's what we think we know. What do you think on this? And kind of more of a back and forth, and more of an exploration. Whereas, training is just, here you go, here's what we know for a fact at this moment. But yeah, I also like that definition, Peter.
I like the idea of being a lifelong learner, and
rather than a lifelong trainer
or trainee.
Yeah. And like taking that approach in my work, like I don't want to seek out training very often. But I want to keep learning, exploring, trying things out, testing, breaking things, fixing them, disrupting other people's work, because I'm doing it in production. But I'm just insatiable. I have an insatiable curiosity. I'm always into something, trying to figure it out. And training, to me, is usually more like condensed, specific, goal-oriented. You're learning this. We want you to learn this thing in the next 2 days or whatever. These are the things that we think you should know. And then someone or a video or a book is going to like somehow do that to you. It's going to transfer that knowledge into your head.
Just right in there.
I have conducted many trainings, more than I can count.
But have you conducted any learnings?
I have encouraged learnings. In my training, one of the things I train on is learning. Like, be a learner, be a lifelong learner, dig into this stuff. You're not gonna destroy anything. You're not gonna break anything. There's nothing you can do that can't be undone in this system. Like,
almost.
Don't fear it. Get in there. Take it upon yourself, because this training's gonna end, and you might not do this stuff for another 3 months, and then that knowledge is gone. Do you guys do a lot of training? Have you done that?
Done some, yeah.
Training others.
Yeah, I have. And I think what you're saying kind of made me think of like training is very easily always terrible. Like it's just easy to like, no, we should never do trainings, and it's never fun for anyone. But that doesn't mean it's not useful. That no, it is different from learning something and continuing to dissect something on your own just so that you can feel you have that complete understanding. But training is really good for trying to get a group of people on the same page. Like, okay, what's our verbiage that we're going to go with? What are, some basic concepts so that then in theory, people can go off and explore on their own. But that sort of treating training almost as like an orientation,
right,
can be really useful. I think the tricky part about conducting trainings is how do you gauge whether or not the people that you're training are interested in doing anything more than being oriented into a, technique or a product or anything like that.
Yeah, how do you measure success as a trainer? There'll be a quiz in 6 months or 2 weeks.
I'm going to track you down, find you, and ask you later about this.
You do learn to figure out the level of engagement when you're losing people, when you're going too fast, when people are frustrated. You learn to look and watch, and kind of your eyes are going around the room. And then it's, okay, that person is obviously working. Maybe they're required to be here, but it's not important to them, or there's some kind of emergency that they have to take care of, and they don't have the luxury of not doing it. Not going to get bent out of shape. Just going to realize that, okay, they're not engaged. I'm not going to call them out, put them on the spot. This is not like school. It's really up to the person in the room to engage.
So would you say training is more pushing the information at somebody, and learning is more pulling the information?
You hope you're
yourself?
playing catch. You hope it's like network connections. Got it, need it, got it. Okay, you got all of it. Yeah, I do. Okay. It's that you hope there's an interaction. Questions are a really good gauge. If people are asking questions, that's like, oh, this is the best. These people are just eating this stuff up. After at a pause or at the end, and you put the call for questions out there and you just hear crickets, that'll put me into a deep, dark depression for like a week. And like I failed.
Okay, so that's from the teacher side of things.
Right.
What about being a lifelong learner side of things? What's like, I've often used training as a sort of a jumping off point, right? Like, I want to or need to learn this skill, but I know that this training won't give me everything I need, but it will give me a start to determine what I need, and then I can take it further with, Google searches and whatever else.
Yeah, it's priming the pump. Like, you need that. This is where all the stuff is. This is how these things work. This is your introduction. Then you can kind of keep that going on your own.
Has that been your experience too, Josie, where training can be a jumping off point, or have you had a kind of a different perspective when you've done trainings?
Yeah, I've absolutely seen it that way, where you start knowing, okay, here's this very complex topic that I'd like to learn more about and see how it applies to my life. And then here's how I can learn about that. Or then as you learn about that, you see, okay, here's how this works for what I need it to do. Here's maybe how it could be better. here's how this could be applied in different ways and how that could flex for what I need. Yeah, I would agree that it's that's always kind of how I've seen that too.
And it feels like a lot of times, at least for me, my ability to use training as a jumping off point is really dependent on how much the material, or even just a little bit of the material, seems relevant to what I'm doing. You know, like I'm training for a electrician certification or something like no, I'm not going to be able to do anything with that information. I'm sure I will come out of it with maybe some nice diagrams, but nope. So it's this weird kind of strategy that you have to do where, like, or if you're forced into training or something like that, okay, what can I pull out of this that is remotely useful? And if there isn't anything useful, then it's sort of like, well, I had to go. I could check that box, but I need to focus on doing something else. But
Yeah.
Peter, what were you?
Oh,
yeah, for
sorry.
me personally, like when I take a training, I might not even finish it. I might just be like, okay, I got the gist. I'm ready to pursue this and start learning this on my own, rather than, oh, I need a little bit more. I just don't quite get that. Let's go a little bit further. I can't tell you the last time I've made it to the end of a training.
Right.
Really?
Sometimes
kinda
you
like-
go back, you go back to it and
Yeah.
pick up more of it. I think the other big difference is if you take the attitude of being a learner, you're taking on the responsibility. You're not expecting somebody to shove that information into your head. It's, and I don't know, like, I think some people do really well with trainings.
They have to, otherwise they wouldn't exist, right?
Well, that's not entirely true, Peter. I'm glad you bring that up.
I mean, I'm sure the industry would
Yeah.
exist, but still, somebody had to have success.
Yes, I worked for a time for a company that did consulting and training, and I asked somebody that had been there for a while, how well do you think training works? How well do you? And he said, well, let me put it this way. Companies want to send people to training so they can hold them accountable. If I'm asking somebody to do something, but I haven't made the effort to get them the knowledge they need, get them up to speed, ramped up or trained, whatever, I can't really hold them responsible if they can't do the work. So there's a separate motive there outside of just that person learning it, which is, one of, I think, the motivators for companies.
It's it's a quantifier of learning. Basically.
Yeah, it keeps I think it keeps the training outfits alive.
Here's kind of an interesting idea I thought of as you were saying that learning seems to be something that you build off of existing ideas and existing framework that you already have. And so I think, too, for training to be successful, it has to know what basics and what skills someone already has prior to coming into that training. And then I think effective learning really happens when people can use that training to build off of ideas that they already have. And maybe in a way, training could fall short because people maybe don't have the prior knowledge before that training to get them up to speed to where they need to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's some people, and I've certainly experienced this too in my life, where sometimes learning is too daunting. Where it's just like, I am looking at Everest and I haven't ever summited a hill before. And I need some help. So the training can either help you start to learn something, but often I found that training, at least if you're in a room or on a call with other people who are engaged and who are asking questions, like Kyle, you said, you can start to learn from them about, okay, this is how they're starting to think about it. How can they pull different bits out? And that sort of makes generally the process of learning, but more specifically to whatever topic you're trying to dig into, a little bit easier to do.
It's true. So I was thinking about this earlier. And Kyle, this harkens back to your background, not necessarily the training that we were talking about, but when you're training someone to be a server and you go through the week of training, at the end of that,
First, they have to learn binary, and then they have to get used to cold temperature. I'm sorry.
okay, maybe a food server. How about that?
Yes.
At the end of that week, they're expected to do it, but you wouldn't call them a server yet.
Oh yeah.
They still have learning to do to be a server.
I wouldn't call them a closer. Like we're not gonna, so basically the way a restaurant works is you start with, 5 servers, 10, and then as the night goes on and fewer and fewer tables are there, you cut servers, you're done. You take more and more tables, and then sometimes another burst will come in, you get slammed. Well, you don't want to put new people in that position. So
No.
there's usually like we used to do a 5-day training, and the first day was you're not going to learn anything today. You have no responsibility here whatsoever. Your job is to follow me around, and I'm going to tell you like what the table numbers are. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing. I'm just going to do play by play, and you just soak it up. And if you have questions, just ask.
Try not
And
to fall down.
yeah. And then day 2 was like, more interactive, more like learning the menu, learning the computer, having them type stuff in. So they start doing the tasks. And, by day 4, like now you're taking tables, maybe a couple. I'll do these, but if this table gets sat, this is your table. And I will just stand there and making people wonder why you have to be watched or why you're training me.
You're doing it wrong.
Yeah. But then at the end of that, like then following that, like the next week, they're going to get a small section. They're going to be first cut, okay, you get 3 tables. So then you're going to ease them into it. And then depending on, the person, they're going to fly or,
They either learn or they
I take
they
them a
need
while.
more training.
Everybody's different. Yeah, some people just get it, and some people struggle, and there's nothing wrong with either person. Like everybody's different. Everybody takes things in at different speeds and capabilities and talents. And, it's like tech support. Like there's no quote unquote stupid user. It doesn't exist.
You're right. Technically.
That person doesn't exist. There's just people from all different walks of life, all different skill sets, and different backgrounds and jobs and stuff. And, and you got to help all of them. But back to learning, I kind of had a really good kind of breakthrough moment with being a learner when I learned to play guitar in my 40s. It's like I felt like that it was something I wanted to do as a kid, and I thought about all the time and never did.
Took no training.
I took no training. I took one beginner class in like 3rd grade or 4th grade, and wanted to do it. And my mom gave me the "we'll see," which means it's not going to happen. Yeah. Well, guitars are expensive.
Yep, that's the soft
Yeah.
no.
How about your uncle's old trumpet that hardly works? Okay. But, finally I really got pressured into doing it by this guy that used to come into the place I was a waiter at. And I finally gave in, but I thought like that ship had sailed for so many years. And then he taught me how to do it. He taught me how to play. He's got me started, lent me a guitar.
Wow.
Like he was completely responsible for getting me over that hump and through that like beginning period.
You didn't
Teaching
just
me how to learn.
teach you all the chords though right away, right?
No, you get one key, so 3 chords that are easy to play. No F in there, no F chord. You know, that's months down the road. One simple 3 chord country song, and you're making music. And
Yep.
it's like this moment. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
So
And
what kept you at it when you were like, I'm gonna maybe start picking this back up? What keeps you at it, even though, you know, at the beginning you're like, there's one
Yeah.
chord, I'm not playing the song I want to be able to play.
the same thing that keeps people golfing that are horrible at it
Fear.
is, yes, camaraderie sometimes. But once in a while, you hit a really good shot. You drain a really long putt. You crush a drive. And it's the same
Big
as
one.
you have successes. You have breakthrough moments where like I can do the chord shape with my left hand, or I can strum with my right hand. Those are my options. Both at the same time? No, that's not happening. But all of a sudden when it does, and then it's kind of automatic and it becomes easy. Like it's those moments are unbelievably exciting. At least to me, they are. Like, I'm doing it. Look, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like singing and playing guitar, that's a whole nother thing. Like, okay, now I got both hands. Now I got to sing, remember the words, remember the chords. Yeah, it's like juggling 5 balls. You can do 3. Good luck doing 5. So that's another breakthrough. Learning a song.
Mhm.
You know, maybe it's got a new chord that's hard to play. So it's all that stuff is kind of built into that journey. And also realizing that you're never going to be Eddie Van Halen.
What?
You're never going to be that, you know, it's like, dude, I'm sorry, but you're in your mid 40s.
You could do it.
You could probably get in a band someday.
Yeah.
You could probably do open mic nights. You can, but there's a guy that's got a hat out busking in the Skyway that you'll never be as good as.
Hmm.
There's
It's no fair. He practices.
yeah, learning that stuff when you're really young, it just happens so much faster, I think.
Is that
Yeah,
because you
your
have
brain's
more?
a sponge.
Yeah, more neuroplasticity at that age.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have more, and I don't think you ever have none.
Right.
Like they've disproven the fact that that the old dog can't learn new tricks.
Right. It just may take a little bit more.
They're just, the tricks they learn are not going to be like as good as they used to be, maybe when they have more time or they were younger. There's
right.
just something about that. So
we should talk something related to SDG or
we work there.
technology.
Yes. Sorry,
Instead of recruiting all these weight folks and guitar players.
Hey, you never know. Maybe those will be 2 new practices down the road.
Yeah.
I mean,
You'll see me at a restaurant, like going
it's
table
popular.
to table playing guitar, serenading folks when I should be doing my work. Yeah.
How about computer stuff? Does that just come naturally?
Well, it depends. Like consulting, like programming, development, UX design, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Those are different. They're different than project delivery, QA, Like there's so many different things we do, and we have such a wide variety of people, and they require such a wide variety of skills that it's hard to put it in a box. I can talk about like being a configurer instead of a like a programmer, a developer.
Right. Yep.
You know, I'm more of the mechanic than the engineer that designed the car and built it. You know, that's just persistence. That's like,
That's learning.
yeah, you're always learning. You're trying to keep up with things, but then you have to. Robert Hansen has given some really good presentations about keeping your skills fresh. And his approach is he's not reading every single thing about everything he's doing. He's like figuring out that stuff exists. Okay, this is a thing. This exists. And that way when he needs to do something, he knows what's out there, and then he can go to that, and then he can dig in deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of start, yeah. Go ahead, Josie.
One of my questions then, like following up to that, would be if you are learning and you know that, okay, I need to further this skill, but how do I further that? Where do I go next? How do I know which direction to take? I think too, that's kind of where training can tie in. As you can see, here are these training opportunities to me. Here's the skill that I'm good at, but maybe want to get better at. What else are these trainings teaching me to help me to know what that next step in learning might be? Because I think too, if you've been in, say you've been in an industry for 20 years and you're really, really good at what you do, but you have this small skill that you heard about a long time ago, and you know, I need to build this skill, but I don't even know 20 years ago it was this skill, but now it's this other skill. How do I build that? What direction do I go in? And I think it is helpful to find those trainings as, again, a launching off point. So you can start with the training as the very beginning, but it can also be the way to continue and to move forward. It doesn't always have to be the very first step.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one thing. You're going to have a really hard time being a consultant if you don't enjoy learning. We're put in a lot of different situations, and it can require having a lot of breadth of knowledge more than anything. And Josie, you're totally right that the trainings, more like formal structured trainings, can be a really good way to build something up so that, okay, I know how to pass a tech interview with this skill, because I need to get a ton of information in my head to be able to get in the door so I can start helping and I can build from there. And that may involve additional trainings. But even then it feels like for consultants, and you guys correct me if you disagree, the trainings that we do are coming from each of us. Like, it's not ever coming down from the top. Everybody needs to be proficient in Fortran because
That's
we want to
right.
keep that alive. But it's more, okay, I'm kind of interested in IoT, and this client might be doing a little bit of IoT. So I'm going to volunteer to do this training rather than it being handed down from on high.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sometimes even at a client, you'll be working in one direction and see the path to another direction and be able to take it with a little bit of training or a little bit of learning.
Yeah. For
Peter,
sure.
you've had some long engagements at some clients.
I have.
Sticky.
Have you ever been
Had some
like
short ones too.
stuck in a technology like long term where you're not able to, or being challenged to take on new things or learn new things?
I've always made the claim that give me 6 months and even VB6 is exciting for learning for 6 months for the programmers out there. Just because you've never dealt with their system or whatever. But after that, yeah, you can sort of get stuck, but not really get stuck, because even if your client is doing one thing, you're still attending, learning opportunities and training that, we might have a SDG presents on something and be like, oh, that looks exciting. I think I'll tackle that now. And then there's the infamous home projects that are, how can I fit more technology into my house without breaking it, I guess, is really the question. That we've talked about that before, with a number of devices and IoT and things like that. That just always be learning, right? Instead of always be closing, always be learning.
Josie, you do UX, UI design. And that didn't really take off like until, I don't know, seems like it kind of started ramping up.
Yeah, it's a relatively new field, I think, in terms of definition.
Right.
I think it's something that everyone's been inherently doing. I think the idea of to design and the design process is something that it's a way of thinking that's kind of existed for a long time, but it hasn't really been named up until maybe 5 to 10 years ago. It really became like a very structured discipline, and now colleges are creating entire degree programs for it where it didn't exist before. And so that's a really interesting field to be in, because even those who are considered experts in it are continually needing to learn, because the field itself is developing as they're working in it. And so it is cool to see and I'm part of some professional organizations that they do a lot of monthly trainings, kind of a meeting for one person will present on an idea, and then each person will take that idea and apply it to whatever project they're working on at the time, or any company that they might be at the time. And that's a really good way to disseminate information that might not even be spoken about in other circles, or how to present new ideas that are kind of just emerging. So it's it's an exciting place to be, and a cool place to see how learning is passed off in different ways that people are trying new things and developing their skills.
Yeah, because I kind of went through the same thing with SharePoint, where I'm kind of trying to find someone that's like a mentor, has the how it's done figured out, or finding information on the web. Like, this is absolutely the way this is done. And it's just not out there. You might see things that are there that say that, but it's like trying to, I always felt like I was missing out on, like, because I wasn't part of a team that had people that have been there and done that and could help me get up to speed. Do you find that in UI, UX?
Yeah, I do. And something too that's really unique about UX is we have this, you have a lot of user research that goes into UX. You need all of your strategies and your decisions to be based on things that you've tested and things that you've learned. And so you're continually, as you're developing new products, you're continually going back and testing them, and with real people, and learning firsthand how they work with those things, and if they're successful or not for them. And that too can even change over time. Something like a user interface that was successful 10 years ago is not going to be successful today. And so learning what those trends and those understanding what their understandings are, and then applying that to your work, and how that affects your work, is continually changing. And that's also exciting, because you're always, even the product that you developed 5 years ago, it then will become updated at some point in the future to match those mental models. It's a continual learning process that you're engaged in as a user experience designer.
What we were willing to muddle through and suffer with in the past, like, you can never go back. You don't know how good it can be, like, in the future. You never know how fast this thing can go. Like, what's that going to bring? but you always know how bad it used to be. This interface was so confusing, but we had to use it. Like, that's the other thing is necessity. Like, this is how we have to do it. This is the system. So we're going to learn it. And then once people really learn a system that's really hard to use and tricky, they don't want to go away from it.
No.
Oh,
It's like, I've invested so much. This was so challenging to get the hang of, and now I'm really good at using this horrible thing. And you want to take it away? What
It's
is
like-
wrong
Fingers
with
still no VI, right?
Yeah.
It's like switching between an iPhone and an Android. Like as soon as you're very used to the UI of an iPhone and you try to figure out where everything is located on an Android phone, it's just a completely different, it's a completely different experience. So people are pretty hesitant. Once you're in iPhone or you're in an Android or Google phone, whatever that might be, you kind of stick with it. You become brand loyal almost to the point that you will not change.
I think I picked up an iPhone once and it burned my hand because it was evil. And I'm like, where's the buttons? How come there's no buttons on this thing?
Yeah, I will say as a mixed phone household that it is challenging for sure. You can't just pick it up and go, I know exactly what I'm going to do right now. It's, I need to switch to Apple mode or I need to switch to Android mode.
So should you ever have to pay for training? Or is there enough out there?
For good
enough free
training?
resources? Yes.
Yeah, I think there are times where you have to pay, especially for good training. There's some things that are best learned through the community. I know the Rust language has a really good site that and a sort of a tutorial that makes you do things and leads you through by examples and doing some of the work, and then you pick things up. But then there's the flip side where there might be resources available for other things, but they might not cover. They might give you the second day of wait staff training, but that's it. So you skipped over the first day, you got the second day, and now you're going to take a section of 30 tables. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
You're just going to be failing all over the place. So getting some good training to get you to the end, I think really pays off.
I found I'm okay with paying for training when the instructor is good. That's like the material is kind of okay. I mean, usually that's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But if you get an instructor who can contextualize what we're learning and can answer questions that are more than just, can you repeat the definition of this word? And if there is really that engagement, absolutely. I'm good for paying a training.
Yeah. Well, if it sticks, and because if you don't want to leave training and have to go learn all of it.
Yeah. Yep.
You hope some of it snuck in and stayed there. That's why, when you roll out a system, stuff like that, you want your training to be like Friday, because Friday's a horrible day to do training. Thursday,
Yes.
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, in the morning, 10 a.m. Anyway.
I love how specific that is.
Yeah. But as
If
close
you're looking
to
for the ideal,
as close to when they're going to be using it as possible, because then they can jump into it. Ideally, interactive training.
Yep.
So when I did Teams training, it was everybody bring your laptop. Okay, let's go into Teams, and now let's just start doing stuff.
and we're going to use Teams to do the rest of this.
Yeah, we started a Teams call, then we Like all of us quickly muted our mics and speakers when the feedback hit. Oh man, that was a bad idea.
That would be
But
exciting.
I think one of the things you're pointing out, Kyle, when you're talking about having interactive training is training's also a lot more fun if you're going into it as a group. Training
Yeah.
by yourself usually sucks.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
lonely. I
Yeah.
love when people ask really good questions that I didn't think of asking.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you get a lot more gaps that you're not filling in with by
Yeah.
yourself because you don't even recognize it as being a gap. Whereas if you're with someone else, they can say, "Oh, look, there's a gap there. We should fill that in." Oh, yeah, I didn't see it.
Mhm.
So I guess we need a little bit of both. So
Definitely.
much for the title of learning versus training.
Yeah.
Learning
They
and.
both win.
Yes.
Why
What
not
about
both? As they say.
expectations?
Yeah.
What should you be expected to have mastery of versus being able to learn quickly?
Mm.
Like, because I think that's one of the superpowers consultants have is their ability to learn things very quickly, pick things up. When I started out, I was kind of green at it and I felt really guilty if I didn't know every single thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're paying me. And there's something they asked me about that I don't know how to do. I've never done it before. And somebody explained it to me. It's like, okay, think of if you're an attorney and you handle like a defense and you've only ever had burglaries, that you've defended, and then you get like some other type of crime. That doesn't mean you're going to be a bad lawyer. That like there's a like I know how to do the base of this. It's just this new part that's different. I can quickly learn. Once that relieves so much stress. Like, no, part of your gig is going to be learning some stuff and doing some research
And
and
possibly know an existing system or business, right?
yeah. So is it hard to convince customers, Josie, to do things like research and interviews and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, it can be. I think part of a consultant's job is to know how to speak to the value of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and convincing others that the learning and that process behind it is really important. And that too is why it's important to have podcasts like this to talk about what learning versus training is and how that benefits. But our job as consultants is to say, if you do X, Y will be your outcome. And this is how it's going to benefit you in the long run and in the short term. And I think too, everyone at SGD is very skilled at doing that. And it's something that we train ourselves on how to learn how to do those things and how to teach others to embody the traits and the process that we know is the best way to do things. And it's really a continuous cycle.
And I think, again, learning comes into that where you learn that. How did you research? That's a skill. It's not just, okay, what do you guys like? What do you guys do? There's a process and a skill to it that I have no mastery of. But if you know that, if you know the value of it and how it's done, if you've learned that, gained some experience, then it's really easy to bring people up to speed and explain why that's important. And like, no, this is part of it. This is what we do. And this works. And if we don't, this is what happens.
Well, I think it's also really useful to be able to demonstrate to clients that not knowing everything is okay. That it is more about, this is the idea that we can go down. I'm going to, share with you how I'm learning this stuff. If I'm having issues, if I don't think this is going to work. because that's something that the employees at the client go through too. I mean, they're going to have to learn new things.
Right.
Maybe not with the giant rapidity that you have to if you're doing consulting and switching around a lot, but it's okay to not know. It's kind of about showing that learning on the job is necessary. You know, you don't want
Yeah.
someone who comes in and knows all the answers, because then chances are it wasn't a very complicated problem in the first place and you might not need a consultant.
And they know some answers and they know
Yeah.
answers, but they might not necessarily be the answers for the question that you asked, even though
For
they,
sure.
right. Like it might work, it might be an answer, but it doesn't fit your team or your company. And that's where sort of the creation and learning happens.
Yeah, I think,
Definitely.
and I think it's really important to set those expectations up front. They totally redid the UI for this thing. It works a lot differently than it used to, but from what I've seen and I've been like playing around with it and kicking the tires, I think it's the right decision to go with this. But we're gonna probably run into some things that, you know, we didn't anticipate. The way they say it's going to work may not be the way it exactly works.
Right. Rest
And
assured,
there's-
this upgrade should be fine, but
Yeah,
it might
just
not.
want to get that out there. If you see me Google something, like, don't give me a hard time.
Which kind of makes me think about, Kyle, you mentioning that when you were learning guitar, you're like, okay, I had to come to the realization that I'm not Eddie Van Halen. Just how important setting expectations are for your learning and your training. You know, you're not going to go to a 2-day training and have, I don't know, the flute mastered.
Whatever the
Um,
title of the training is.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That it's kind of about, okay, I'm learning or I'm doing this training. That's not mastery of the thing, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think Lou Holtz, the famous college football coach, he wrote a book, and I think in there he told a story of playing golf and getting really angry, being really frustrated, and, you know, slamming clubs on the ground, stuff like that. And then one day, one of the people who was golfing with said, "You know what, Lou, I think I know what your problem is." And he said, "What? You're not a good golfer." And he's like, "Why are you getting, golf is really, really hard.
Right.
You don't play very often. Why are you getting so bent out of shape that you're not great at it? Just enjoy it."
Right.
Yeah.
If you put the same amount of time into golf as you did coaching football, you would be a better golfer, but you can't because you're coaching football.
What
And-
if you just can't grasp something like algebra and calculus? For me, I just couldn't like do very well with math.
Do you
When
need
do
to
you-
grasp it?
When do you give up? Not really. Not anymore.
It's like you maybe stop that or give up or put it on hold, whatever language you want to use, when it's not useful and it's not fun to be putting in all that energy. If it's not going to be relevant and it's not for your own personal gain, maybe
Well, and I
just focus on something else.
Yeah, I've had, like, where I'm at a client back when I consulted, and sometimes you run into something where we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want me to be the one to take this on. We have people that just do this for a living. Kind of like when you need a data scientist. We've talked about that before. Like, this is a whole like expertise.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not going to be able to create this algorithm, this machine learning stuff for you. We need to bring in the big gun to do this. How do you know, like, when that moment has happened?
I'll say experience. I mean, you have enough of those moments that you've tried. You've gone past the point of recognizing that this is going to be hard and maybe impossible for you, and just knowing that, oh, this is where I'm at. I'm at the point where I need some help, and calling in some help. It does wonders.
Yeah. Like you're either out of time, you're out of money, or the risk is too high for you to continue to try and fix it yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I think time is really the determiner, because if you spend so much time trying to do something and you're spending hours upon hours on doing something that someone with different competencies could do in a third of the time, it's going to be much more beneficial to bring that person in than to try to do it your own.
I could learn Spanish to read this manual, but I'm not going to, because someone else already knows how to do this.
I will look up the English translations for.
Yes, I will just take somebody's word for the translations.
Yeah, I've had that moment. Okay, I think JavaScript is harder than I thought it was. I don't even know what these brackets and semicolons are about. I just know that I have too many or not enough.
I have an error and it won't go away. Maybe somebody can make it go away for me.
Okay, it's day 3, and I know that Peter could do this in a half an hour. It's time to throw in the towel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to learn it in your own time and eventually be able to do it. It just means at that point in time, it's just not quite right.
Right.
on that.
And that's
Absolutely.
like, I think the challenge of learning is important. Like something to rise to. Like, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to figure this out. And having that kind of aggressive persistence and commitment to something, you know, sometimes that's the only way you're going to get there. Like, there's barriers on that path to learning something that you're going to run into, and you got to beat your head against the wall until it sinks in. Yeah, my sister told me that I was frustrated about something, and she's like, well, you just have spent like a half an hour on it today. Like, try it again tomorrow, then try it again the next day. And then all of a sudden, like, you get those fresh eyes, or you start looking at something a little differently, and then something clicks, and those are really cool moments. There's a big payoff when you figure stuff out. I have, like, if somebody was watching me, like at work, you know, all of a sudden raising my hands in the air and cheering.
Yep.
And they're like, what is he doing? Like, he's really excited. He's dancing in his cube. Why is happening?
Kyle dancing? What is he doing over there?
Yeah, it came up on my review.
Eurekas are so fun, though. They're so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Josie, thanks for joining us today. It's good to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was fun to be here.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap it up. Any last thoughts?
Always be learning.
Or training,
ABL.
or both.
ABL, ABT.
ABL, ABT. ABLT.
Awesome. Well, that was the SDG podcast. Thanks for listening. If you want to get a hold of us, drop us an email at thepodcasters@solutiondesign.com. Until next time, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.